Today, Britain's GDP per person stands just above $46,400. At first glance, this per capita GDP may seem like a more fair and accurate way to measure a country's wealth because it is calculated for each person. But there are times when the wealth behind this number is nothing more than an illusion. Britain's economic past is a fascinating journey that spans hundreds of years and is marked by times of fast growth, new ideas, and change. From its beginnings as a farming country to the height of the Industrial Revolution and the complexity of the global economy today, Britain has changed a lot. This country is proud of a small group of well-known universities and businesses that keep it on the cutting edge of technologies like AI and the development of vaccines. Most of this wealth is in the often visited southeastern region, which is home to 37% of the country's people, but makes up an amazing 47% of its GDP. This area has a wide range of rich things, from beautiful country lands to the well-known schools and Oxbridge colleges to high-paying jobs at global corporations. But when you leave this golden world, a different story begins to unfold. Since the financial crisis of 2008, Britain's economy has been stumbling, with low productivity and low pay being the main problems. Recently, India took its place as the fifth biggest economy in the world. The United Kingdom has had a rough few months, with rising energy prices, double-digit inflation, and the death of the Queen, who had been in power the longest, and the resignation of the Prime Minister, who had been in office the least. During the 2008 global financial crisis, Britain was hit the hardest, and its economy broke down. Because the British government was worried about growing deficits, it chose a policy of austerity, which put debt concerns ahead of productivity and overall demand. The results were bad. Real wages went down for 6 years in a row, and real family income hasn't changed in 15 years. In 2007, the average UK family was 8% behind Norway and 6% behind the United States. But since then, the gap has grown to a shocking 20% compared to Norway and 16% compared to the United States. Real household income is one of the most important things that drives economic activity, improves individual well-being, raises living standards, encourages customer spending, and helps the economy grow as a whole. On the other hand, when real family income doesn't grow, it hurts consumer spending, economic growth, income inequality, government finances, savings, and investments. A study by the Resolution Foundation found that 11% of Britons, or 6 million people, had gone without food because they didn't have enough money. Also, an amazing 60% of adults, or 32 million people, said that their financial situation has gotten worse since the beginning of 2022. I'd just like to add here that if you'd like to support our videos, you can do that by subscribing and opting to alert yourself for newer content. Coming back to the UK, the main reason for these problems is that Britain's growth engine has slowed down. A slow-growing economy in Britain not only makes people's lives worse, but it also forces the government to raise taxes to pay for services that aren't as good. On all fronts, the education system is failing. Schools are struggling with a lack of money and teachers, and the National Health Service is in bad shape. For a long time, the UK preferred finance over industry, austerity over investment, and a closed economy with less prosperity over an open economy with more prosperity. As expected, wages will go down and output will be shockingly low. Britain is one of the least productive countries in the developed world. Its workers produce fewer things and services per hour than workers in other countries. Between 2000 and 2007, British output per hour grew an average yearly rate of 1.9%, which was second only to the United States in the G7 group of countries. But the global financial crisis was a huge setback, and Britain's productivity growth rate was the second slowest among the G7 countries from 2009 to 2022. The cost of this lost decade is, without a doubt, very high. If Britain's economic growth rate hadn't slowed down after the global financial crisis, its GDP per person would be 18% higher than it is now. There are many different ideas about what causes and how bad Britain's productivity problem is, but most people agree that the country doesn't spend enough. Productivity growth is driven in large part by investment, by putting money into fixed assets, technology, and people, investments give businesses the chance to streamline their processes, using cutting-edge technologies and improve the skills of their workers. All these changes improve efficiency, making it possible to make better things and services in shorter or longer amounts of time. In terms of spending, the UK is behind. Since the financial crisis, the UK's business investment rate, which is the percentage of GDP that companies spend on infrastructure, equipment, and research and development, has gone down. This is on top of the already low rate from the 2000s. The Resolution Foundation says that even though total investment in research and development as a share of GDP is higher than the OECD average, it is still lower than in the United States, Japan, and Germany. Also, the UK does not do well when it comes to spending in things like market research, branding, and training. So the difference in productivity between the UK and its peer countries is due to a lack of investment and a lack of skills. So why aren't businesses investing more? The problem is that there is more uncertainty, both within each company and in the business as a whole. The graph shows how economic policy confusion has changed over the past 25 years, showing how it has gotten steadily worse since the financial crisis and the Brexit vote. In 2008, when the economy was shaken by the financial crisis, the UK government threw a lifesaver to British banks at an estimated cost of £141 billion, with liabilities totaling more than £1 trillion. The goal of this unusual move by the government was to keep the British banking system from falling apart. To get the economy going again, the government started a £31 billion stimulus plan, increased unemployment payments, and sped up capital spending all at the same time. Because of these acts, there were years of budget deficits and growing debt, which reached about 70% of GDP. In 2010, a conservative-led government started austerity steps to try get rid of budget deficits by cutting government spending in many different ways. Cuts hurt the police, the upkeep of roads, libraries, courts, prisons, and housing help for seniors. The idea behind austerity was to lower the UK's deficit, which would give the markets more confidence and, in turn, help the economy grow. Even though austerity policies helped reduce the deficit in some ways, they had little effect on growth. The UN says that conservative government attempts to cut state spending deepened high levels of poverty and caused unnecessary suffering in one of the world's wealthiest nations. Since 2010, the Conservative government has cut welfare payouts, housing subsidies, and social services by more than £30 billion, which is close to $40 billion. But the British government still doesn't believe that these measures have any negative effects. Due to big cuts in public spending, the number of poor people in the country, especially children, has gone up. Before the budget problems, both Conservative and Labour governments did a lot to help poor children. From 1998 to 2012, the number of children living in relative poverty dropped by about 34%. But this trend changed in 2012, when the Welfare Reform Act, a key part of austerity, was signed into law. Since then, about 600,000 kids have gone back to living in relative poverty. At the moment, 4.2 million children in the UK live in poverty, which is 1 in 3 children. This big number is surprising for a country like the UK that is supposed to be wealthy. There is little doubt that Brexit hurt the economy directly. According to the Bank of England, Brexit cut investment by 25% in the 5 years running up to 2021, mostly because of more uncertainty. The problem isn't that the downturn is happening, it's also that the government keeps denying that it's happening. They keep saying the country's wealth hasn't been shaken. Right-wing supporters of this idea do so out of patriotism, while left-wing supporters use it to call for more spending. Why are benefits so low when we have the 6th largest economy in the world? But when compared to other Anglophone countries, a very different story comes out. The average American has 39% more money than the average Brit, and is 38% more productive. Also, housing is less expensive in the United States, and young people have better financial prospects than their British peers. Once the birthplace of productivity revolution that changed the world, the UK now ranks last among big economies in terms of productivity. What was once the biggest empire in the world has decided to restrict trade and ability from the rest of the world. After Brexit, immigration, trade, and foreign investment all went down, which could hurt the UK economy by a few percentage points in the long run. The UK is a lesson for countries that are struggling with deindustrialization, slow economic growth, and hostility towards outsiders. Britain became less strong after it switched its focus from industry to banking and made its economy weaker. The look for scapegoats was made worse by falling living standards. Some right groups, looking for people to blame, made up threats from other countries. Brexit cut off the economy's ability to grow, and economic measures hurt the people of Britain. Since the 2008 financial disaster, the UK has lost too many years, but there is hope that the next 10 years will be more productive. For similar content, feel free to look at some of the other clips on your screen.